Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me on the Gift of Need podcast. I'm sorry I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat. I'm getting over a bad cold. I'm Jude Trang, author and observer of human need in society. This podcast explores the overlooked power of need and how it shapes behavior, relationships, and society. It's born from the belief that our needs are not burdens, but gifts. My guest today, I'm so excited, is Catherine Dahl Luckow. She is an author, wife, mother, and grandmother. Cathy and I met through our mutual friend and editor, Kelsey Rockhold of Pagefire Press, who published Cathy's new book, When Darkness Comes, His Mercy is More. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, Cathy?
Thank you. Hi, Jude. I'm happy to be here. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was raised with three brothers. Our parents were really young when they got married, so we had young parents. I lived sort of in the same community from when I was in first grade to 12th grade, and so I grew up with a lot of stability and sameness of people, and felt like I was pretty secure in that. I ended up attending NAU, which is in Flagstaff, Arizona, and got a degree in elementary education, which I used a little bit in my early marriage and a little bit about 5 or 6 years ago, stayed home with my kids. But I married my husband. I met him at NAU. We got married soon after, and I did my student teaching in Tucson and my early teaching in Tucson, Arizona, and then we went on to have 5 kids, and we now have 11 grandchildren.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that's exciting. Well, today, we're going to be talking about the many different kinds of suffering that we experience in our lives and how our perspective and beliefs about pain and suffering affect how we process them and how we can either grow through them or become disillusioned or worse, despondent. And Cathy her book is obviously about suffering and grief. So have you had a personal experience of loss in your life?
Yes, I did. I remember as a child thinking nothing bad ever happens to me. And my mom was a good mom. She was steadfast and she took good care of us. And I don't think I had very much awareness of lack or need as a child. The truth was my father was an alcoholic. And so there was a bit of quiet tension present during my upbringing. But my mom seemed to hold it all together. And even though my dad sometimes was unavailable, my mom was very present. So my encounter with grief was when my mom suddenly died when I was 17 years old, a junior in high school. And her death really blindsided me because I didn't have had no tools for it. And I had no capacity to even understand really the emotions and the depth of what loss feels like. I was pretty powerless to understand any of it. It was shocking because she'd only been sick for about a week and then just suddenly died. She had been really healthy. None of us was really prepared. And we went on to just sort of manage it ourselves. Our dad was really young. He was 38 years old, and he himself was probably engulfed in that grief. And while we knew he loved us, I think he didn't ever intentionally or really purposefully help us navigate that.
Right.
And that might have been a little bit more the times. It was 1975, but I also think it was just our circumstances. And so we all went on without her and figuring out how to do life as adults. And we all ended up accepting a relationship with, or developing a relationship with Jesus Christ shortly in the years following my mom's death, which I think sustained us all quite a bit. And, but yeah.
Well, I don't think your dad was unusual in that he was not taught or modeled any of those things, and so
Correct.
How can you share something you don't have yourself? So people tend to then pull into themselves, almost like a turtle pulling their head into their shell, right?
Yeah, that's really wise. I think that's very true. Yeah.
You say in your book, make no mistake, the wounds are real. Sometimes they are more gaping than at other times. Suffering shapes us, And what we absorb there in that trench can be poured out to those who follow behind us if we allow it. Loss, grief, and sorrow are a part of the experience of all of our lives, and it benefits us to learn to suffer well. So the gift of need is about this very idea, how we can use the needs in our own lives and what we have learned from them to benefit others. How has your experience of loss prepared you to help others who are in that trench?
Well, I certainly think it's been 50 years now, so I certainly think that I'm aware that my experience developed in me a deeper empathy for others and an awareness of the cost of a traumatic loss or just a tragic death in the midst of your life. I think that I already was somebody who felt deeply, but it helped to open my eyes and my heart to minister to people. And I think even to recognize the benefit that it has been to my life to have suffered something so deep and being able to walk in other people's shoes a little easier. I don't think everybody can do that. I think that until you've walked in that space, it's just difficult to apply those emotions and those responses. Really, I think it facilitates it and makes it easier. I don't think it's anybody's fault if they haven't had a tragic loss. I think who wouldn't rather have that, you know? But I just think that you develop a lot of empathy and ability to cope with that and help others coming along. I read a quote that said, "We are being called upon to gather the wisdom we have found on our long walk with sorrow and make it available for others. For we carry the soul medicine for those beginning their apprenticeship with sorrow."
Beautiful.
Yeah, I just think we end up having something to offer, and I think it's really important to do that, and it somehow softens the blow for us too as well, to use it like that. My husband lost his brother at 39 in 1993, and I think at that time was when we'd already been married for 15 years, and I think he finally really understood what it meant for my loss of my mom, because my mom had also been 39, and so I think it solidified for both of us as a couple the need to go towards people who are suffering, and even if we don't feel like we have the right words, which there really sometimes are no words, there often are no right words, we just know people need to know that you care. Yeah.
That's so important. Why don't you tell us what the impetus was for you writing a book on the dark times in our lives?
Yeah. I think because I had experienced it so young, and grief is a thread in my life. I knew back when I was 17 that I was part of some exclusive club of people who lost their mothers, and there weren't very many of those. I knew one other person, and there's something very isolating and lonely about that. And then for whatever reason, in our community, the people in our church, and just the people that Jim and I knew from work, we've watched people for a couple of decades have some really difficult and tragic losses of people that they love, whether it was their spouse or their child, but a lot of untimely, unwanted losses. And particularly in 2019, we experienced about 5 of those in a row, and I think my heart just got really piqued to. Initially, I wanted to tell the stories of these precious lives that were lost and honor them and bring mention to who they were. But on the other hand, I also really was watching people navigate loss and be fully sustained by God, and that I wanted it to be a story for a reader to understand that despite the most horrific things none of us want to come our way, that they will be carried, and in Christ they can be buoyed, and there's going to be a grace that comes that you can't anticipate until you're there.
And it seems like you're also talking about how we as humans can comfort one another, right?
Right. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think all of the stories I wrote a dozen stories, and all of the people, would testify to different ways that the community came around them, different people, different ways, and how it really carried them. I have one friend who said it felt like we were being carried on a stretcher. You know, that just the support of people showing up in the consistency really matters.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great word picture, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Do you think that you and these people were unusual in the number of tragedies they experienced?
Unfortunately, I don't. I think that for certainly my example of living, but as I've watched people, and I think the more people you know, the bigger your family is, the more people you love, the more connections you make in this lifetime, and the longer you live. I think you're bound to walk alongside somebody who's suffered something really horrific, because it's kind of part of life. It's part of being here, is that we're going to have losses. I love the expression that says, everything we love, we will lose. And I just think that it's really common. I believe that each of us is living a story that God is authoring. And we aren't choosing all of the details and the twists and turns, but he can use the way that we respond for his glory. I don't think that we can have to be so brave. I don't think we're ever going to say it's okay. I don't think it's ever really okay. I think that had my mom been a part of all of my adult life, or most of it even to this point, it would have been better for me. I think there would have been wonderful things to that. But at the same time, I think her death probably built things in me that has made me the person I am today, and that's just as significant.
You know, I have several friends who have lost mothers when they were young, and I would have to agree with you that I feel like they were better equipped or more insightful or deeper people at a younger age than the rest of us were. I absolutely agree with you. So your book speaks a lot about God's grace and him showing up with comfort when we suffer. And you quote Elizabeth Elliot, who lost her husband and 4 other missionaries in the Amazon jungle while they were trying to make contact with the Auca tribe. She then stayed 2 more years with her infant girl as a missionary to the very tribe members who had killed those men. And she said, "God does not give us grace for our imagination." What did she mean by that?
I think that's such an excellent quote. And it meant so much to me when I first heard it. I actually heard her speak when I was in my late 20s, and I have just never forgotten that comment. I think that when we imagine things to happen to us that aren't actually happening, there's no grace to be factored in. There's no, the Lord has not sustained us through that because we're just fearing it and dreading it and imagining that we would never be able to survive that. But what I've really watched, and also would testify to the people that shared their stories with me, is that God really shows up and undergirds those people with a grace and a mercy and a strength that they otherwise would not have known. And they're able to put their feet on the floor and keep going. And even when they're numb, even when they're reluctant, even when they don't think they're doing a very good job, they're still moving forward for different reasons. And I think it's just the grace of God that really it's a very tangible, real thing that gets factored in and measures in, despite the pain and the sorrow. And when we imagine things happening, the grace is not there. It's just not there yet.
I think that is really a good thought, because somebody like me, I'm a contingency planner and I want to plan everything out ahead. And I remember a friend saying to me years ago, "Jude, you just can't plan for every contingency. You just can't."
Yeah.
And that's a trust issue that then you have to say, when some disaster comes, God will carry you through. And I remember when my younger brother, JD, died in 2000 of AIDS. None of us knew he had it, and he all of a sudden went into respiratory arrest and was in ICU for 2 months. And we finally found out that he had AIDS and that he was not going to make it. And after his death, that was the first death of somebody other than a grandparent that you expect to die, you know. And my heart was broken, and I had terrible fear. I began stuttering. I was afraid to be in the car. And what I realized, a friend said to me, you know, you have to remember that even if it looks like nothing's happening, when the disciples were in the boat and Jesus was fast asleep and the waves came up and he was like, why are you worried? I'm here. And it looks like I'm sleeping, but don't ever forget that I'm here. And it took me about 9 months or a year to get past that dread of what, if that can happen to my brother, what else horrible can happen? Yeah. You know, it's a real feeling and a real fear and
it does. Dread. It really rocks your normal. It rocks your foundation of how you understand life, and you're forced to learn some things that you don't want to learn or you didn't think you'd have to learn. And so the mental capacity of that requires quite a bit. And spiritually, it's the way to turn, because then you end up with strength that you didn't know you could access. It's not like I'm ever going to be a person that is so capable of handling hard things. It's more like I know where to turn.
Well, because you do see people who, you know, don't have a faith in God. A lot of times what I've noticed is that those things harden them up. And so they do get through. I'll be doggone, they're going to get through it. But what has happened with their character and their heart? Are they open and available to other people? Has it caused them to be somebody who, from their great need, now offers that gift to other people? You know, that's really the choice that we have. Right?
It is a choice. And I think I remember even feeling maybe 10 years into my marriage, which was about 15 years after my mother passed away, I remember feeling very vulnerable about feeling too depth of a love for my husband and my kids, because I was afraid, because I had lost something that was dear to me. And I remember having to consciously think that you have to make yourself stay in the game, even when the temptation is to build a wall around yourself or to hide, because the pain is great. Yeah. But we're not going to escape it. And that's the other reality, is as long as we're here, there are going to be people like you just mentioned. You lost your brother, and I know you've lost another sibling, and I haven't lost siblings yet, but you know, unless I go first, that's going to come.
Right.
And so it is a part of our existence.
Exactly. I always say to people, it is a fallen world.
It is.
And we have to decide how we're going to deal with those losses. Right. You know, what are the varieties of stories from the people you know and that you share about in your book? I found it fascinating to see what it's like, every spectrum of the different types of death that one can experience. Would you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of losses in our lives and a lot of sorrows that don't always include just the death of somebody. But my book primarily is about the loss of a person's life that you love. And what the Lord showed me in it is every death touches a lot of different lives. There's the mother or the father or the brother or the grandmother or the uncle or the best friend. There's just a lot of different vantage points that loss touches. And so I worked to interview different people. I told the stories from one vantage point primarily. There was one that has a few vantage points, but mostly interviewed one person who felt it. And I tried to pick a different member of the family for each one ish. What I wanted it to show was the spectrum of how we lose people in our midst, and it's very far reaching, how those lives touch other lives and the impact that has. There's people that sometimes we maybe never even know about who are watching that from afar, watching the whole thing and learning something about God and learning something about grief. In my book, the deaths go from cancer to suicide, to addiction, to illness, to accidents, and even murder. And so as I pondered the people to interview, I just thought about who I thought would be able to give words to their experience, and also then to put it in a book that somebody could read it and see themselves in their stories. They could say, "Oh, I felt that way. I guess that's normal. I'm not alone." That was some of how I felt too. Or to remove some of the dread people have over thinking they'll never make it when they lose a child. I still feel that way. I still feel like I don't want that to happen or come my way. But I do know that God is present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did those stories and you and getting to know these people and their deepest feelings meet a need in your life and become a gift to you?
Well, I would have to say that those interview times with those dozen people are some of my sweetest memories. I think I'm a person that really values talking about things that matter and things that are real in our lives. I enjoy people a lot. I don't mind talking about the weather or telling jokes, but I particularly, this was really rich and meaningful, these times with these friends. And it meant the world for them to trust me with their sorrow and their suffering and their emotions. And I wrote down what I heard, and then after I did that, I sent it back to them for their approval, to let me know if what I expressed was if they were comfortable with that being printed, and then made edits from there. But so they had to be really vulnerable and have a lot of courage, and it took a lot of honesty. And I think it was extremely a big privilege to me. It blessed my life so much. I enjoyed painting the picture of their lost loved one with dignity, and recalling the value that person had to our lives. I did think that, Jude, I did think that when I finished writing that it was going to buoy my own confidence in being able to face loss again, and that I would come away a little braver. But I would have to say that I still dread any of those things that could come my way. And the truth is, those stories testified to God getting those people through their worst nightmares, really.
Oh boy. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share about your life and what you've learned about grief and loss?
Well, one of the things that really helped me was getting to a place, and honestly, I think because I was basically a young child, not a young child, but I was young when my mother passed away. I didn't have a lot of the words or the ability to completely define what I was going to do with that or how I was going to live with that. So it took years. It took many years, but I got to a space where I felt really thankful for the mother that I had. And I think that was very liberating for me to get to that place where I could look at her life. If Scripture says that our days are numbered before there's even one of them, then if that was my mom's story to live to 39, that was her story, that in her story, I got to be her child. And she was my mom. And so much of what I learned from her, even only till age 17, about setting up a home and putting dinner on the table every day and doing laundry and just organizing a life and a world that was structured and safe, that was huge. It affected my entire life. And so to be thankful that I had that particular mom for 17 years instead of a lesser mom for a lifetime helped me. It just made me feel like, oh, okay, so I wouldn't trade what I learned there. I wouldn't trade that was the mom I got to have. Because the other reality is that having her for a mom doesn't take away, that's just a truth that doesn't die. She was my mom. And it imprinted me. and impacted me.
Right.
And so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. What a great tribute, to your mom and to your journey of having lost your mom as a young person. Yeah. Anything else?
The other thing I thought of is that I really liked, that has meant a lot to me, was that expression that says we're all just walking each other home. And if I think of God just authoring our lives, and He's the author and perfecter of our faith. He's sovereign over all. And no matter who we are part of in our families, but we're still each our own story. And I think that no matter how we are intertwined with our husbands or our children or our grandchildren or any of those people that are especially close to us, we're still living our own story. And I think that the idea that I'm just walking alongside the people that I love, or even just anybody that I know, and walking them till they go home, till they meet their maker, and that we can just do our best to show up for people and to care about them and to encourage them and exhort them, and because really we're all just walking each other home.
Well, that's a really sets the mark for what your focus, like you're looking ahead, you're looking at the horizon, which so many people, I think, because death has fear involved in it. And even people who have strong faith. I always say to people, I'm not afraid of death itself and what's on the other side. I have great confidence, but I am a little bit afraid on the how it's going to happen, because we're in our body, and pain is pain. And when you hear and read about how people have suffered, my husband and I just got done reading, again, The Tale of Two Cities. And you just think about when they describe, in the Bastille and the prisons, and then what happened with the reign of terror and the vengeance that the people wreaked on other humans. Right. Those things, like I go, oh no, just shoot me, don't stab me, don't cut me apart. So. But I think that's borrowing tomorrow's troubles, right? And having that view of the horizon and the long view, and having that as a goal can give you the faith and the hope. And I feel like that's what your book has done. So,
well, I hope so.
Well, we could go on. It's time to bring our conversation to a close. So thank you, Cathy, so much for making the time to be with us today and to talk about how the needs we each have, all the variety of them, can become gifts and meet the needs of other individuals and communities and our society as a whole, which in turn brings joy and fulfillment to us all and fulfills that need we have. I think each of us have a need for purpose and meaning. And when we give to others and we sacrifice and give to others, we really feel that sense of fulfillment and purpose.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Oh, well, thank you. You can check out Cathy's book on Amazon. And the great music you're hearing was written and performed by Gabe Kubanda at Kubanda Music. You can find him on any streaming service. Please consider following and rating this podcast and subscribing to my free Substack newsletter, and leave a comment or review. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.